word problems today, and pray that my board holds its calibration as we go through these. These are going to be, for the vast majority, standard form equations. So we're going to have x plus y equals some constant in those problems. And we worked with that a little bit at the end of chapter 2 when we were working with these. There are going to be some other equations that are just going to be algebraic expressions. So you're going to read it and it says the length is twice the width, and you're going to take those words and turn them into equations. So we're going to spend the next couple of days looking at how to know when to use each type. For number 1, a group of 40 children attended a baseball game on a field trip. Each child received either a hot dog or a bag of popcorn. Hot dogs were $2.25 each, and popcorn was $1.75 per bag. If the total bill was $83.50, how many hot dogs were bought? I'm trying to find the number of hot dogs, correct? My problem is there's more than one thing I don't know. I don't know the number of hot dogs that were bought. I also don't know the number of popcorns that were bought. And so what we're going to do is start by what we call defining our variables. And so we're going to say h is equal to the number of hot dogs and then I'm going to go with p is equal to the number of popcorns. I like using what I would call a meaningful variable so that when I get down to the end, I actually know what I've solved for. So I know whether I've solved for popcorns or hot dogs instead of just having x or y. So I know if I have p equals, I know I found the number of popcorns. I also like to be very specific with what I'm defining my variable as. I'm defining it as the number of hot dogs. That way I know my answer has to be a whole number. I can't have half of a hot dog. I can't have a third of a hot dog. I buy the whole hot dog. Okay? And because I guess you could maybe buy half of a hot dog somewhere, guys. I don't know. You could go up to the concession stand and barter with them, maybe. I don't know if that works. But do they, you know, I mean, like that hot dog looks a little short and a little old. I'll give you, you know, I mean, there's bartering, kind of like when you go garage sailing. I guess you can barter. But guys, do they say anything here about haggling the concession stand or bartering or getting a deal? So they're not telling us that they're kind of, you know, buying half of a hot dog or paying half price. We have to assume that these are whole hot dogs. I need to write 2 equations. So when I'm looking at writing an equation is something that has an equal sign in it. So I'm looking for what I equal, which means I'm looking for my totals. Well, I can quickly find one of my totals, my total bill. My total bill was $83.50. I know that was the total. So what I'm going to figure out is how did I come up with a total of $83.50? How did the concession stand manager, the lady who works the concession stand, figure out that I owed her $83.50? Well, last week when I went to the concession stand, I bought 2 ring pops and 2 airheads. So she did 2 times the cost of the airheads and 2 times the cost of the ring pops, and she added those together, right, guys? Is that how they always do at the concession stand? Anything you buy, they take how many you bought and multiply it by the price. They take the next item you bought, however many you bought, and you multiply it by the price, and they just keep adding those things together. So I don't know how many hot dogs I bought. That's what I said I'm going to try and find. But I do know that each of those hot dogs was $2.25. So I know that concession stand lady did $2.25 times the number of hot dogs.
So you do 83.50 divided by 2.5.
Well, is that all I bought? Did all I buy is hot dogs? What else did I buy? So remember, when I was doing my airheads and my ring pops, she added those 2 together before she told me I owed her $2.75 or whatever my total was. So I've got to add in the fact that this group also bought popcorn, so it's $1.75 times the number of popcorns. Which now that we put that part in, guys, I can't solve this equation at all. It has 2 variables in it. I can't divide by anything and solve for h or for p, which is why you have to have the second equation. If you have 2 variables that you don't know, 2 unknowns, you have to have 2 equations to solve that. So what we need to figure out is what is our other total? 40. I know I bought a total of 40 items, right, guys? They don't say you bought a total of 40 items, but how do I know I bought 40 items? There were 40 kids, and each kid received either a hot dog or a bag of popcorn. They got one choice. So if they only got one choice, that means there were 40 items that were bought. So that means when I look at the number of kids that chose hot dogs plus the number of kids who chose popcorn, those two numbers need to add up to 40. No one got a pass. You didn't want either one of those things, the neighbor next to you talked you into giving you theirs. Okay, so every kid was given a hot dog and a popcorn. So now what we have is we have two variables that are unknown. We have two equations, and so we're going to be able to use either substitution or elimination. You can use either of those methods. Graphing, ladies and gentlemen, I would stay away from, simply because trying to solve this equation for y, we're probably going to have some ugly decimals for our y-intercept, or we're going to have such a large graph that it's going to be difficult to graph those. So, how do we want to solve this problem? Okay, let's do elimination. So I've got 225. I'm going to try and recalibrate my board. It's not holding the calibration for me. So we have 225H plus $1.75P is equal to 83.50. And then we have H plus P is equal to 40. I'm either going to multiply by negative 2.25 because then my H's will cancel out, or I'm going to multiply by negative 1.75 and my P's will cancel out. I had to write notes up ahead of time for a student who's gone today. I chose the negative 1.75. Why? Why would I choose that? There's a couple of reasons. One, it's the smaller value, right, guys? So it's going to keep my numbers smaller. The other thing is when we multiply this equation by negative 1.75. So let's go through and do that. That gives me negative 1.75H. Negative times a positive is negative 1.75P. And then this is a negative 70. When we do negative 1.75 times the 40. When I do that, my P's cancel out, right? I'm going to have 0.50H is equal to 1350. What was it that they wanted me to solve for at the very beginning, guys? Hot dogs. Is that the variable that I ended up keeping? Yeah. And so if you can see that they're only asking you to solve for one thing, eliminate the one that you're not looking for. So eliminate your P. Dominique, you mentioned using substitution, which substitution will work really great. This is easy to solve for. I would solve for P, so that when you're plugging that in, you have all H variables left. Okay? Not very often do we ask you just to solve for one thing. Most of the time we ask you to solve for both. We divide by 0.50H, or 0.50 or 0.5, and we get H is equal to 27. So I have 27 hot dogs. Ladies and gentlemen, your word problems are difficult for me to, or I should say, it's difficult for you to check those because you're writing your own equations. But most of the word problems, ladies and gentlemen, if I give you an answer, I would probably say 90% of my students can tell me if that answer makes sense. Because they can read through it and go, oh, hot dogs are $2.25 and popcorn's $1.75. I'm going to actually calculate what my cost is. And so on the notes that I wrote for the student that's gone in my afternoon class, I said, take the time to find how many popcorns you actually sold, or actually bought, I'm sorry, so that you can check and decide, does your answer make sense? So how many popcorns would we have bought if we bought 27 hot dogs? How would we figure that out? If you bought 27 hot dogs, how many popcorns did you have to have? 15 or 13? 13, because you only had a total of 40 items. So when we talk about checking to see if our answer makes sense, guys, I'm not necessarily plugging it into either one of these equations. I'm just looking at this and saying hot dogs were $2.25 each. So I'm going to do 225 times the number of hot dogs. Popcorn was $1.75 per bag, so I'm going to do $1.75 times the number of bags. So I'm actually going to act like the cashier at the concession stand, multiply those out, and see what they equal. This becomes a quick calculator problem or mental math, depending on where your comfort level is. I'm not good with the decimals. I need my calculator there. I typed it in, guys, and it gave me 8350. Does that prove that this is a good answer? Because I got the total that I was looking for there. Okay? I would like you guys on your worksheet, I want you guys to get number 3, number 1 set up for me. All right? So get your worksheet out, get the 2 equations written. You may not have time to solve it. All right. Guys, the money problems I used to feel like students had difficulty with, but the more I related them to number 1, that we actually look at how do we calculate money, how do we calculate our bill somewhere, the money problems really start to make more sense. So these money problems that we're going to take a look at in number 2, and you have a couple of them like them on your homework, think about it in the way that the concession lady calculated our total. So Courtney has nickels and quarters in her toy bank. She has a total of 52 coins with a total of $9.20. How many coins of each kind does she have? So what are the 2 things I don't know? Nickels and quarters. So I don't know, I'm going to let n equal the number of nickels. And I'm going to let q equal the number of quarters. Once again, it's the same thing that we had before. Because it's the number of nickels and the number of quarters, I can't have decimals. We can't have part of a nickel or part of a quarter. I guess once they start breaking and chipping, they become worthless. So what I'm going to look for are what are the 2 totals that I have. I know she has a total of 52 coins, and I know that they have a total value of $9.20. So if we think back to the first problem, we had a total of 40 items we bought because the number of hot dogs plus the number of popcorns equals 40. I have a total of 52 coins. How did I figure out I had 52 coins? Well, I took the number of nickels plus the number of quarters, and that equaled 52, the number of items I had. I'm just counting up how many nickels, how many quarters. But when I get to money, guys, it's the same way we would calculate the cost at the concession stand. I took how much an airhead was and multiplied it by the number of airheads. I'm going to take how much a nickel is worth and multiply it by the number of nickels. I took how much the ring pops cost and multiplied it by the number of ring pops. I'm going to take the number of, or the value of a quarter, what the cost of a quarter is, and multiply it by the number of quarters I have. So when we've got this money total, when we have a total amount of money, whether it's the total amount we're spending or whether it's the total amount we've accumulated, that money value is calculated by how much is something worth times the number that you have. So how do we want to solve this one? Once again, could we use either method? Some people say substitution. I like elimination. That's the one I like. I don't know why. I just really like elimination. But you can use either one. So if we take a look, but I will do substitution for this one, just so we can have a recall of what substitution looks like. Which equation would I solve for n or q in? The top one. So I'm just going to solve for n. So I'm going to have n is equal to 52 minus q. I subtract that q. This is going to get plugged in for n in the second equation. So I'm going to keep the 0.05. Remember, a nickel is 5 cents, guys. That's 5 pennies, so it has to be in the hundredths place. Times 52 minus q. And then I still have plus 0.25. Q is equal to 920. We're going to distribute here. Grr. I don't have this. I didn't do it this way this morning on my other notes. 0.05 times 52. $2.60.
I don't know who would do it this way other than Christian.
I don't know that Dominique had
Dominique
said
was-
substitution. He said substitution earlier.
This way is for elimination. Much easier. This way for elimination.
Don't lose the 0.6 here, guys. That is one of the problems with these money ones is that you do have a lot of decimals. Negative 0.05 and positive 0.25 is a positive 20 cents, so 0.20Q plus 260 is equal to 920. I'm going to subtract 960, so I have 0.20Q is equal to 660. And then we divide by this 0.20. So as you can see, guys, I did it with elimination this morning when I was doing notes by myself. Doing it this way, I still get Q is equal to 33. So no matter which method you use, we're going to get the 33 quarters. Shane, so I know I've got 33 quarters. This problem's a little bit different because it doesn't say how many quarters does she have. It says how many coins of each kind does she have. So that means I have to answer how many nickels are there. So how can I figure that out? Subtract from that 52. Guys, a lot of times this first equation here is going to be your real quick one. Take your total and subtract how many you have. 19. How would we check that? I'm a perfectionist. I want to turn in a good quiz. I want to get 100%.
33 plus 19 was 50.
Awesome. 33 plus 19 was 52. But that wasn't the only total that this girl had. What was the other total that she found out in her piggy bank? She found out the number of money. So how do I find out if this actually equals $9.20? 25 cents times the number of quarters. 5 cents times the number of nickels. Also, I have to tell you, using this equation as your check is not a good check, and here's why. How did I get 19? By subtracting 33 from 52, correct?
Right.
So that means these two answers will always work in this equation. It's this equation, our money equation, that we usually need to check our answer in because we haven't used that equation to find our second answer. So you really want to go back to that money equation. Trust me, guys, this works. I checked it before school today to make sure I was on the right track. So right now, we're done with notes for today. The back side will be for tomorrow. Your job right now is to do one of the money problems. So I would like you to jump to number 3. I want you guys to work on a money problem before you leave. And then the rest of the hour is yours to work on this. Front and back, all 7 problems are due tomorrow. So let's use our time wisely. Remember, we're still trying to earn a privilege, so let's